Hello and welcome to the first lesson of Unit 5. Now what I'd like you to start with is I'd like you to jot this cheat sheet down in the top corner. What this does is as we are solving for different angles, we're solving for the values of different trig functions of different angles. This helps you determine whether or not they're positive or negative, which will be a very vital thing. Basically, depending on the position of the angle or its size, its trig functions are positive or negative depending on which quadrant it lies in. So take a moment and pause the video, copy that down. So in the first problem, we are given that secant is -3/2 and the tangent is greater than 0. As a result, we're going to be in quadrant 3 because of a negative secant and a positive tangent. Secant is negative in quadrants 2 and 3, and tangent is positive or greater than 0 in 1 and 3. All right, so since the secant is -3/2, I'm going to use my identities over here on the side to take a look at that. Now, because I have the secant, I immediately have the cosine. The instructions in this problem say to find the value of all 6 trig functions. So since the secant of u is -3/2, the cosine of u is -2/3. Next, I'm going to use a Pythagorean identity that says that the cosine squared of an angle plus the sine squared of that angle is equal to 1, which will mean -2/3 squared plus sine squared u equals 1. So that'll give me 4/9 plus sine squared u equals, and I'm going to change that from 1/1 to 9/9. When I subtract the 4/9 from both sides, I get sine squared u equals 5/9. The last thing I need to do is take out the squared. So the sine of u will be the square root of 5/3. And remember, because I'm in quadrant 3, that sign will be negative. So now I have secant, I have cosine, and I have sine. If I have the sine, then I also have the cosecant, because the sine and the cosecant are reciprocals. So the cosecant of u will be -3 over the square root of 5, and it stays negative because our cheat sheet says the cosecant is negative. And then I will rationalize the denominator. -3 square root of 5/5 is the cosecant. Now I've got 2 more to do, tangent and cotangent. According to the quotient identity, the tangent is equal to the sine divided by the cosine. So the tangent of u will be -square root of 5/3 over the cosine, which is -2/3. My negatives cancel and become positive, and my over 3's are eliminated. So the tangent of u is equal to the square root of 5/2. And it makes sense I want the tangent to be positive. The cotangent will be the reciprocal of that.
Good morning, Alvin High School. Teachers, don't forget to pick up your homeroom schedules in the attendance office this morning. And students, you will be going to homeroom before first period.
So the cotangent of u will be the reciprocal of that. And I'll rationalize the denominator. to get 2 square root of 5 over 5. And I now have all 6 trig functions. Now the next ones I have typed out for you. I've copied the typed portion of it. Sometimes students prefer that. So simplify the sine of t plus the cotangent of t times the cosine of t. Well, if I start with this, I can rewrite the cotangent as the cosine over the sine. When I do that, I get the sine of t plus cosine squared of t over the sine. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to get a common denominator, so I'll multiply both sides, or I'll multiply the other one by sine of t over sine of t. So I'll get sine squared t plus cosine squared t over the sine of t. Now, according to our Pythagorean identities, sine squared plus cosine squared is, all of that is 1. And 1 over the sine of t is the cosecant of t. So when you simplify sine t plus cotangent t plus cosine t, you get the cosecant of t. On the next one, perform the addition and simplify. Well, what I want to do here is I want to get a common denominator. So I'll multiply the right side by 1 plus the cosine of theta and the left side by the sine of theta. When I do that, I'll get sine of theta times sine of theta plus cosine of theta times 1 plus the cosine of theta over, and then my common denominator is 1 plus the cosine of theta sine theta. When I simplify and multiply that, I get sine squared, let me take that little thing out. I'll get sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta plus cosine. Well, I will then get sine squared plus cosine squared are 1, so I'll get 1 plus the cosine of theta, and then that matches something on the bottom, so I simplify to get 1 over the sine of theta, which, based on the reciprocal identity, is the cosecant of theta.